times of watching that video before I realized that the background beat was meant to be a heartbeat, that throughout the whole piece, heart to heart. I remember when Hannah was little. Hannah is our firstborn, and she's now 30. But when we first brought her home, Hannah would not, I won't say could not, but we couldn't make her sleep in her crib. But she loved to sleep on me or on Linda, with her head pressed very tightly against our chest. And that, I'm told, I was an infant once, but it was a long time ago, and I don't quite remember it. But there is something comforting in that steady beat of the heart, of listening to and feeling that beat. And so, intriguingly enough, in the afternoon, when it was time for Hannah's afternoon nap, I would have to come home. I would have to be home from work and hold her so she could sleep, because listening to my heartbeat apparently calmed her. It meant that I also got an afternoon nap, which that we all yearn for, and yet at the same time is so very risky, very scary. And whether we want to admit it to each other or not, especially men, we are not good at admitting this. We're afraid. We're afraid. I'll say it one more time. We are afraid. Fear often drives so many of our actions. Our posturing when we come in contact with another person, so that we can be protected from really revealing ourselves to anyone else, because they might want to hurt that really part of us. So if we put a little fake part out there, and that little fake part is projected, if they hurt the fake part, it's fake to begin with. We created it. It's an illusion. But I would hate to live my whole life as an illusion. Instead, I want to live from that presence of a God who wants nothing more than to be absolutely and fully connected to me, and for me to realize I am absolutely and fully connected to God. You know, I am not God, but I'm not other than God. You are not God, but you're not other than God. We are so connected, so interwoven, every heartbeat a gift from God, and God is part of making us be us. You read that first story, the second story, the second creation story in Genesis, the one with the garden and Adam and Eve. And in that story of Adam and Eve, we have the shaping of a human being from clay, and then the breath of God that animates us. The spirit wind of God animates us, makes us who we are. And so it seems very appropriate for us to talk about spirit. Now, I have to say to you as well, before I read this section today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific spiritual gifts. And in the New Testament particularly, there are lists of spiritual gifts. And some of them are as short as 4, a list of 4, the big ones, ones like prophecy and pastoring. And then there are other ones, other lists that are longer or shorter. I don't want you to get caught up in the lists. So much of our life is caught up in lists anyway. And I don't think God is all that intrigued by our lists. Do you think that the 10 Commandments are exhaustive? No. They're the basics, but we ought to do a little bit better than the 10 Commandments. We ought to do a little bit better. It's basically don't murder people. I'd like to believe we've got something more than just not murdering each other. If we can't do any better than that, then we're really not doing very well at all. And the same is true of these lists. Don't get caught up in the various lists. Paul even makes a I'm going to read to you from 1 Corinthians, his first letter, more or less his first letter to Corinth. In that first letter, the chapter that follows the section I'm reading to you from is a big one. It's one everyone knows. It's the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. I'm reading to you from 12. But in the beginning of 1 Corinthians 13, Paul makes sure that he makes a complete list of all these gifts that you might have. If you could speak in, the tongues of human beings and of angels, but you don't have love, you're a clanging gong or a clashing cymbal. And it goes on. Only he says those things don't matter as much as love does. So let's keep that love underpinning us. Worry a little bit less about the lists and look instead to what this text has to say to us from 1 Corinthians 12. And I'm beginning in verse 4. There are different spiritual gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are different ministries and the same Lord. And there are different activities, but the same God who produces them all in everyone. A demonstration of the Spirit is given to each person for the common good. A word of wisdom by the Spirit to one person, a word of knowledge to another according to the same Spirit, faith to still another by the same Spirit, gifts of healing to another in the one Spirit, performance of miracles to another, prophecy to another, the ability to tell spirits apart to another, different kinds of tongues to another, and the interpretation of tongues to still another. All these things are produced by one and the same Spirit, who gives what she wants to each person. It goes on to speak about Christ as a human body, and each one of us parts of that body. Now, as you listened to that text, I hope you heard in it the echoes of how important it's all connecting us to the same Spirit. It is all connecting us to the same Lord. It is all connecting us to the same God. A little allusion, if you will, to the Trinitarian. Today is Trinity Sunday in the traditional Christian understanding of the calendar, at least in the Western tradition. And so there you go. You got all three mentioned. Yay. Today we're focusing on one, perhaps the least understood, and maybe that's on purpose, the Spirit. That one Spirit wants to reach out and connect us to God, but also to connect us to one another, to empower us to do the kinds of things that makes the world a better place. Not a worse place, but a better place. And those gifts that are given each one of us look very unique and different. You may not know what your spiritual gift is. There are plenty of tests online. We used to have a link on the website that pointed you exactly to a test you could take that would at least give you a sense of what your spiritual gift was, what it looked like, what you might be. You might have the gift of faith. You might have the gift of giving. You might have the gift of healing. I've been told that I have the gift of healing. Now, I don't walk up to people and put my hands on them and suddenly whatever they had wrong with them is gone. Because that's not really healing from a biblical perspective. It really isn't. Sometimes it works that way, but healing is a much bigger thing. It's healing the whole person so that while you still bear the cancer or the brokenness within, you become more whole, more full, more connected, more yourself in the wholeness, because that's what God is yearning for in each one of us. And so that spiritual gift that might be poured out in us, that gift of healing, is a presence we bring with us, for instance. When I sit with people who are in the midst of struggle, I have a person who said, James, can I just stand next to you for a minute? Really good friend who's like, James, can I stand right here next to you? Just want to stand next to you because I just feel your presence and it gives me a sense of peace. This is not some kind of pat on the back brag. It is simply an understanding of the gifts that have been appropriated to me, that God wants me to use to build the kingdom. Now, I do this prophetic thing every Sunday morning because prophecy really is preaching. It's truth-telling. That's what prophecy is. It's not predicting the future. That's a misapprehension. Most of the prophets say, you know what, if you don't fix your life right now, things are going to go really bad. Really, really bad. That's what prophets do. They tell you the truth. They don't lie to you about how everything can be fixed so easily. Just one little neat linchpin, fix a couple of things and everything's going to be fine. That's not what they say. They talk about the core of who we are. But their gift of prophecy comes from the one Spirit. Whether you read it in the Hebrew Bible or the New, that gift, that true gift, is a gift from God's Spirit. It allows us to speak truth into each other's lives for those of us who are called to be prophets. Now, if you don't feel like you have any spiritual gifts, you're already wrong. I don't tell you that very often. I just want to tell you that. I don't like to tell you you're wrong. But if you think you don't have any spiritual gifts, you're wrong. You're absolutely and completely wrong. You are a reflection of God's goodness, and that giftedness emerges in a very unique way. Everyone in this room could have the gift of faith. And I'm not just talking about faith that says, I believe something. Faith that those people. But for instance, if you know Veronique, she has the gift of faith. When I talk to her, I know that I'm talking to a woman of faith. I feel it. I feel the faith come off of her. I feel it. Now, I didn't mean to embarrass Veronique. We've never talked about her spiritual gifts. But the truth is, that's there. When she talks about her relationship and connection to God, her prayer life, it's a life of faith. It's a life of faith. Now, she may have other gifts too. All of you may have gifts that you have yet to discern, but need to be used to make this world the place God hopes it will be. That's part of why we do this thing on a Sunday morning. And then throughout the rest of our week, this kind of sets the tone for what we're called to do for the rest of our weeks. And it sets the tone of living out and recognizing the spiritual gift God has given us so that we can use it in the most loving, compassionate, and healing way that we can. It doesn't take very much for you to look on the world that we live in right now and realize there's some things that are off about it. That there are some things that are, I don't want to say broken, but maybe bent. And maybe can be unbent. Or maybe we can use the bend to further what God hopes. But people can't talk to each other. People can't listen to each other without immediately interrupting the other to interject what is their opinion. What would it be like if we really let the Spirit flow through us? That which connects us all to God and connects us all to each other. There is not a single person that you could name to me who is not connected to you by the Spirit. No matter what you think of a political party or a person out there or the vitriol they spew, and Lord knows there's a couple of them when I see them come on, I just have to turn off the volume or even turn off the TV or whatever I'm watching because I know what's going to happen. It's going to infuriate me. I can't listen. I can't hear what they have to say. Now, if they were sitting across the table from me and we could have a conversation, maybe. But are there those people in your world that stir you up? You know, I've challenged you before. Listen to those people. Listen to someone else's point of view, but there comes a point where you just can't take it anymore. And you have the sense that they don't realize how connected we all are, because they talk about each other and us as if we're something else other than a connected human being. Spirit is about connection. That's why the very next image that is used by Paul in 1 Corinthians 12 is the image of the body. We all play a part. You may think your part is insignificant. You may think, and some people tend to, I know I go into places that somehow imagine my part is more significant than theirs because I happen to be a pastor, a preacher, this is my life. And my part is no more significant than yours is. In fact, in some ways it's less because my primary work is with you all. Then you got to go out and do all the real work, like connecting with your neighbors, your coworkers, the people that you encounter. You're doing the hard stuff. This is easy. That's not really easy, but it's who I am. It may not be what you're called to do, but it's no more important than what you do. It's no less important. The eye can't say to the toe, oh, no. And the toe doesn't say to the eye, ugh, I don't want to see anything. We're all connected, and we're part of making this world a better place. So the question becomes for each one of us, what is it that you bring to the table? I asked you to begin thinking about it last week, to begin praying about it last week, to begin asking yourself last week, what is it you bring to the table? You don't have to have all the answers. The gift of knowledge is rare. You don't have to have all the wisdom. The gift of wisdom is rare. If you don't speak in tongues, either the tongues that only God can hear, or the tongues, there are two kinds of tongues. There's another kind of tongue, biblically, that when you're talking, everybody understands you. None of you may have that gift. All of you may have that gift. I don't know. Whatever you have, though, is ultimately made to further God's kingdom. Whatever gift has been given you is meant to make this world the place God hopes it will be. We've got to get our focus off of the next world. I have no idea what heaven's like. I know the Bible doesn't even say a whole lot about it. It has some metaphors about it. But it's not, Jesus doesn't teach a whole lot about it. Jesus teaches a whole lot about living right now. Right now. And the consequences of living right now. So it seems to me that what God wants us to do is live right now. To use the gifts we've been given right now. But part of that is figuring out what your gift is. Not what I tell you. Veronica needs to let go of anything I said about her gift of faith. Just ignore it, even though I believe it's true. She has to discern for herself what her gift is. And then she makes it real in the way that she lives and speaks and loves and encourages and offers. Those are the way that we are invited to live. The spiritual gifts are not something to lord over someone else. Oh, look, James has said he's a healer. I'll never be that. You don't know. You don't know until you open yourself up to the way God wants to express divinity in you. Jesus called out the very best of 12 mismatched people, the ones we call the disciples. Read their story closely. I know we venerate and honor them, but they were oddballs, and a lot of them came from very strange walks of life. They would not be the people I would pick to pass on everything. And that's why I'm not God. Because God sees in you what you don't see in yourself. And God calls that out. That's what a spiritual gift is. And it's reflected in your uniqueness, your giftedness. So, the next couple of weeks offer more direct. We're going to talk about what this gift or that gift looks like. We're going to look at some of the lists. But on the other side of that, if you don't feel like any of the lists we talk about are you, I don't want you to feel like you don't have a gift. Because at no point does the Bible ever say that the lists it gives are exhaustive. Paul might have been writing 20 books that were just the gifts. So don't let yourself be limited by the ones we're going to talk about. But recognize God uses you, your wiring, the person you were made to be, to change the world. The key is being who you were made to be on God's behalf. That's the hard work. Listening for the heartbeat of God.